All right. Come on in, folks. Come on in to the office hours. I hope you all got your coffee and you're situated and you got tons of questions so that we could have some fire conversation. Um, Welcome to office hours for the Advanced Local program here. And this is specifically for office hours tier two, which is short term construction, last mile, and non deployment. So, my name, in case you didn't know it, is Stephen Gould, and I'm the senior program specialist here at the CBO, and I've been here for 6 years now. And we do have some super team members on here to help answer questions that might come our way. Um, and let's see, do I have any next slide, Kristen? So, in general, we're just going to talk about a few things. We did this in the last office hours, so you may have heard it or you may not. Or this time around, you might have some questions. So, we'll see how it goes. But just we're going to talk about the timeline, the non deployment changes that we made, and just some reminders and then questions. But if the questions come and you want to just jump in, that's I'm totally fine with that as well. But just some quick housekeeping here. Like I said, this is for tier two office hours. The next meeting is going to be August 6th at 10 a.m. And then we have like a special one that we're doing that involves just non deployment, and that's on August 20th at same time, August 20th at 10 o'clock. And just a reminder that the CBO cannot provide any guidance that may be considered that might give somebody a competitive advantage. So we're kind of very particular about that because we have to be. So, and then we're going to answer your questions. And if you have questions later, you can always send them to the advanced local inbox. We appreciate that. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, you can. I'm okay with that as well. So next slide, Kristen. So just a real quick overview on the timeline. This is a pretty, kind of truncated timeline. There's a lot that happens in between these dates. But just real quick, this tier opened on June 29th. The application window closes on the 13th of August. Um, but for non deployment, that window is going to close on August 28th. We did extend it 2 additional weeks to allow you some additional time because we did have to make some changes to the portal and we want to be fair and give you the proper amount of time to get your applications in. So that's why that's kind of an extended timeline for non-deployment. I'm only talking about non-deployment. Other than that, the window will close on August 13th. So I'm thinking about it. That's coming up pretty quick here. So and then what we would do was we publish the intent to award on by September 23rd. And then we have an appeals process and challenge process and all of that. So that's September 23rd through August 7th. And then we publish those results. And then what do we do? We announce the final awards by October. So, and then hopefully in December, we get those agreements out the door. Hopefully, all goes well because this is all new to us. And we appreciate you being patient with us as we take this journey through this new process and this new system and this new program. So, I am so grateful for your patience. So, I appreciate that. Next slide, please. So we have a super team member that's new to the super team. Her name is Melanie. She's awesome, and she pretty much heads up the non-deployment aspect of this, so which is wonderful. And Melanie, do you want to just talk real quick about about this, what you did, and kind of what's going on with you in terms of non-deployment?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Uh, Non-deployment for the purposes of these awards are the same as digital equity, digital inclusion. digital access. So yeah, this is a really exciting thing that the broadband office is doing right now. We did a webinar on July 14th, and if you go to the website and look in resources, you will find the recording and the slides for that webinar. And it was really focused on making sure that people who are applying for these funds are thinking about the impact that they'll have in their community. Thinking about the impact first, in fact, instead of focusing on the project first. So if you're interested in that and you'd like a little bit of support, thinking about how you might be able to articulate your project and how it impacts the folks that you want to serve, take a look at that. Um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that, Stephen.
I appreciate that. And if you did not see or weren't here for Melanie's presentation, you missed a good one. It's got a lot of information. So I encourage you to go to the website and take a look at that. So that packed with information, because I do think non-deployment is going to be a big deal. So next slide, please. So just some reminders. So before I kind of go through that, I guess what I really want to say is that when you're going to complete the application, be sure to be thorough with that, because you kind of are in a competition with others. And so um, crossing the T's and dotting the I's is going to be extremely important. Make sure it's just a great application, and you don't get, kind of eliminated on the small technicalities. So that's going to be really important. Um, but we have tons of resources for you. It's not lacking. So if you go to the Advanced Local website, um, funding, and you'll see and click on the Advanced Local state dollars, and you'll go to resources and you'll see all that information there, the addendums, user guides, all that stuff is there. So please go there, review the guidelines for relevant information, try to gather all the information you can beforehand before you start the application process. And I swear to you, to go a lot smoother. It will. Yes, it will. Let's see. Read the minimum requirements of the award criteria, and the scoring. It's so important. But remember that the minimum requirements and award requirements, they're two separate sections. And minimum requirements are questions as well. It may not appear that it's questions, but it's asking you questions. So when you answer, make sure that your answer is specific to that question. And there are two parts, but it's all jumbled into one box for you to enter that all that information in. So it'll probably be something we fix next time around for the next cycle to make it more clear on what we're trying to do. But so that's why I'm just emphasizing on that minimum requirements and award criteria, they're two separate things, two separate set of questions in one box. So make sure your answer lines up with the question that it's asking. So there's that. Um, Use the correct naming convention when you upload the file, so that when I go back to review and make sure that everything is there, the application is complete. I know what I'm looking at, and I can match it up and check that box off and say, yep, the application is complete. Um, Also, there's a workbook involved where we try to capture a lot of financial information, things like that. So make sure you complete the workbook. And I thought the workbook was going to be a big deal, but it seems like I haven't gotten any questions about it. So it must be a good a good thing if we're not getting a whole lot of questions about like the workbook. But um, if you're there, be sure not to alter the workbook, because it contains a lot of formulas and it might mess up the calculations. But if you need more rows and columns and things, let us know and we'll cater to you and fix it and send it back to you, and you can do what you need to do. I see I think there's something in the chat.
Hi, Stephen. I'm adding some stuff here. There was a question about for uh um okay, there it is. Is it a requirement that any proposed activity must occur in underserved, unserved locations? And for the non-deployment, I would say it's not required, but we do want to know what the need is for the populations or community geographic area that you want to serve. So as long as that's described well, I think that's what we're looking for primarily. And then I don't know, Stephen, if I don't know if this was specifically about non-deployment or if it was about.
Yeah, I missed the first part of it, of that question, where it's something about locations.
Yeah, should the act or is it a requirement that the proposed activity must occur in underserved or unserved locations?
Um, that I don't, Judd, I don't know
And
if
Yeah,
that's a question.
yeah, I think the answer to that is yes, because the legislation enabling this program prevents overbuild. So it'd have to be an unserved area or an underserved area.
so that's
Last,
for
that's for
anything
last
that's
mile and short term construction, which short-term construction is things like make ready poles, spending money on, pole repair to serve those unserved and underserved locations.
Hopefully that answered that person's question. I'm not sure who asked it, but that is exactly why we have the super team on here. That is why. Thank you, Judd.
yeah.
Uh, um, is there any other questions in the chat or anybody who wants to come off the mute and have a conversation with us?
Yeah.
I dare
Stephen,
you.
before we get there, there's one more question.
Okay.
For non-deployment digital access, are we using the same budget as the other programs? And if so, what sections do we add device purchases? So, I don't know, Brian maybe might be the person for that. I don't think we've structured our, I don't
A
remember
spe-
what that looks
like
like.
a spe-
I'm too
a
new to
specific
that.
section for non-deployment. Yeah, I think there will be, because the applications are different, or cater specifically to that for each of these categories. So I think once you're in there doing an application, it'll make sense. You'll see how it's broken down, but I think you'll be able to sort it out pretty easily. But because that application is catered specifically to non-deployment and last mile and short-term construction, they're all very different. So I think you'll be fine.
So I asked that question. I'm sorry, this is Kirby.
Hey, Kirby.
So the workbook that's provided isn't necessarily the same for the non-deployment.
The workbook is going to be the same, and just pretty much answer what's applicable to you. So it's got a lot of tabs and it's got instructions as well. But if it's something that's not applicable to what you're doing, then that would be okay to not answer it specifically, because non-deployment is very unique in its own right.
Okay, so the
Mhm.
the budget portion of the workbook will look different in the
It won't look
application.
different in terms of how it's structured, but your information, I'm sure, is going to be look very different. But like I said, if we need to cater it to you for something very specific, we can do that. We can definitely have a conversation about it.
Got it.
If you get in
Okay.
there and it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? We can certainly have a conversation. All right.
Got it.
And
Okay.
and I don't know, Kirby, if you've looked in the guidance for the portal for non-deployment specifically, but and like I said, I'm not good at the other two. I'm good at non-deployment, sort of getting my feet under me. But the project budget and financials in that are giving you space to fill out personnel, equipment, consultants and contracts, travel, other indirect construction and permitting. So my guess would be if you're buying devices, it would go in equipment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you.
Kirby, we got you. We got you, Kirby.
we got you,
Thank
Kirby.
you.
So let's see. Is that all that's in the chat? For some reason, Melanie, I could not find my chat box here on here today. I don't know where it's
I
at.
mean, it's
So
Thursday, and you know.
So
whatever.
thank you for reading the chat
Yeah,
questions out.
I'll
I,
read
I
another one for
appreciate
you if you're ready.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
I need all the help
Corey,
I can
Corey,
get here.
Corey Brindle, threw in another one here. Do any of these non-deployment opportunities, would they apply to extending the support agreements on equipment that the state and municipalities have purchased? We've got a large balance of equipment both within Region 10 as well as owned by both the municipalities and the counties. And those pieces of equipment need to have their support agreements refreshed for the next 3 years. And we're looking for a, viable funding source for that.
I think we can post that in the FAQ, Corey. Um, this program, all four of the programs are oriented towards CapEx, not OpEx. So that's sounding a little bit like OpEx support
When we
equipment.
acquire the equipment, Jed, we do include the first 3 years as a SKU from the vendor as a capital expense. And I was hoping maybe we would see some flexibility to consider that a similar capital expense going forward.
Yeah,
But
and that's what I'm gonna
open to
have.
interpretation, of course.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna have to think about, but that's off the top of my head, but we'll add that to the FAQ.
Yeah, I just hate to see millions and millions of dollars of equipment that the state and the municipalities funded go off balance sheet and not be in a supported position.
Yeah, and it's expensive. It can
Yeah,
be.
state put quite a bit of money into those projects. So
Yeah. Yeah, let us get back to you on that.
right on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Let's see. Anybody else here? I real quick, I'll just mention that in terms of the funding part of it that's been allotted to these three tiers is around 14 million. So um, we don't know how that's going to pan out because we just don't know what is coming through the door yet. But so we allotted like 14 million, but that's split between the three categories. So we'll see. So it is limited funds. And I could say that next year it will probably be even less than that. But just to give you an idea of what we're kind of playing with in terms of dollars. Anybody else want to jump in? Um, Super team, does anybody want to add anything or have anything or um,
I
I
I
just want to
saw.
plug the FAQ. Oh, sorry, Melanie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I saw Craig's hand up for a second.
hey Craig?
Hey, I had a question about last mile and number 6 in the minimum requirements, where it talks about have access, must not have access to reliable broadband service. Is that RBS going back to number 4, the 100 by 100 symmetric? And is that on us to see what's available currently at those locations for last mile, or should we just go by what's in the file?
I
So I can chime in. Oh, go ahead, Jed, please.
Well, my quick answer is I think yes and yes. I think it's referring to 100 by 100, and it's going to be up to you to figure out I guess, what the speeds are at that location, whether it has RBS or not.
And is that in a best effort sort of way, based on existing or latest BDC filings?
Is that the FCC fabric, you mean?
Yeah, so it looked like the last mile eligible locations trued up, and you recaptured to the last cycle, and then is the question about that, or should we go and re-audit locations to see what's out there today?
Yeah, I don't know. Colin or Adam, do you know what we publish
Yeah,
is now?
I would definitely say use the BDC as the first approximation, but if you have doubts, probably would be advisable to maybe check a drive test or try to audit those locations. Obviously, the enforceable commitment in terms of funding to those locations might be delayed or, be in process of being published somewhere. So yeah, definitely BDC availability. Good first check.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question, Craig. So thanks for those questions. We've been getting a lot of questions about non-deployment. So I'm really kind of, wow, Melanie.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and here's another one that just showed up in the chat. And I
Okay.
don't know the answer because I don't know. With some of the legacy networks that municipalities have, but may not have kept track of very well, would non-deployment funds pay for a network audit? I don't know.
That seems like another FAQ answer. We'll need to come back and discuss that. But I appreciate the question, check. It's a good one. So I think we'll have to look at that and get back to you in the FAQs.
Yep. Which we post on the website. And Kristen, I forget when they can expect to see answers or when the FAQs is updated. Not to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, no
what's
worries.
the
We meet on Mondays, so we will discuss these this coming Monday, and we should have them up in the day or two after. So by midweek next week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anything else, folks? Just
Yeah,
on the
I thought I'd comment on Shaq on your question there. We'll follow up in the FAQ, but that may even fall under like short-term construction because for make ready, the very first step for like you do a pole audit. So you might be doing a pole audit, see which poles need to be replaced, which ones need to be adjusted, things like that. So that's an audit. And I think that would fall under short-term construction. So I would think we might also allow a network audit, but we'll answer that in the FAQ.
Thank you, Judd. I'm curious if there's anybody on here that has started an application and has been in the portal, or have any comments about that, because you can't start application and save it and come back to it later. So I'm just wondering if there's anybody that has been on the portal, and if not, that's fine too. Just wanted to put it out there and kind of see what's going on, take the temperature. No. Our job looks like it is done here. Our job is done. Any other questions? Anybody? Chat? Anything else in the chat?
Oh, sorry. I did have one other. Sorry to come off mute.
Sure,
The
Kirby. Yeah,
non-deployment application, that timeline got extended, right? And the new
it
date
did.
is, can you remind me what the new date is? August 20th?
28th.
28th. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just a reminder that for the other tiers, that window closes on the 13th, and then non-deployment is the 28th of August. And just real quick, the last reminder was just when you upload, things, just make sure you're uploading in the right format. I think there's only a couple formats that we use, and that would be, a PDF or an Excel file. So I think you're okay there. And the system won't let you go any further if it's the wrong format or anything weird like that. So that is all I have. So I'll just ask again and see if there's any last minute questions. Anybody? So I will thank each and every one of you for the questions. I appreciate what you do. If you have any additional questions, send them to the inbox or contact me directly. I'm okay with that. And reminder, the next office hours is on August. Ah, I forgot already. Back and look. I think it's August 9th, if I remember correctly.
I believe it's August 6th.
Is it August 6th? Am I going crazy here?
I'm back to look, but I think that's
The 9th is a Sunday,
You're right, Brian.
so I hope it's not.
Go the extra mile.
What's wrong with Sunday? It is August 6th. So on that note, I'll leave it right there and just thank everybody for attending. And you guys have a wonderful and blessed day. Thank you.